Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Cronin Law Show. Today, I'm actually merging it with our Cronin Challenge to Change. And I know for some of you who have been with me and the firm for several months now, I have brought to you several guests that have aimed to empower, enlighten, provide motivation, inspiration, and guidance through some of these unique times. And I am so grateful and honored that I do have with me today Katherine Henry. She is a force to be reckoned with. She is an amazingly intelligent and very talented lawyer who has argued about restoring our Constitution and providing just a really great foundation for what our law in Michigan really is and should be. And without getting political on either any kind of side, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, I think it's very important, her message that she brings to all of our viewers and to all of us here in Michigan to really understand our Constitution and what following our Constitution means. And our state and our nation was founded on very simple principles that have really faded over time. And I am so, again, pleased to bring to you Katherine Henry. She has her firm, Restore Freedom with Katherine Henry. She is a constitutional lawyer, and I am very happy that she's with us today. Her time is very valuable. She has a lot going on. She's working around the clock. And Katherine, thank you so much for joining us here on the Cronin Law Show.
Yes, thank you for having me.
So I know that you've been through the gamut with circuits of interviews, and not only that, you're working around the clock trying to meet all these deadlines. Tell us a little bit about, where you came from and why constitutional law. Why is that a passion of yours?
Well, I actually was born in the UP. So, you're from Michigan when you say I was born on a ham. And then I grew up in Orlando, Florida, and I spent 10 years in Minnesota. Actually finished high school, college, and law school there. Moved back to Michigan about 12, 13 years ago. And, just opened my own law firm back then. And I was doing everything, divorces and landlord tenant and real estate. And I always felt like there was something else I was being called to do, but sometimes it takes us a while to find that. And I've done many years of mediation, all kinds of ADR, everything from special education mediation to restorative justice to divorce mediation, no fault cases, you name it. And then when COVID-19 happened, I knew the day the governor shut down schools, that was going to be a historic day here in Michigan. And I'd been keeping my eye on that as March progressed. And by the first couple days of April, I was advocating to our legislature that they need to not extend that state of emergency because it violates constitutionally protected freedoms, as well as some constitutional restrictions upon our government. And obviously they didn't listen to me then. So from that point on, I'd been answering people's questions and speaking at rallies and various events. So at some point along the way, like you mentioned, I did draft the Restore Freedom Initiative constitutional amendment petition, which serves to stop Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. This is a freedom thing. It serves to stop legislature, courts, governor from infringing upon our constitutionally protected rights. It serves to clarify all these things that we're wasting months and months of time and thousands upon thousands of dollars to litigate all these issues. We don't need the courts to solve every single problem. We need to be able to clarify and restore our Constitution right now so that these things don't keep happening in the future.
So, Katherine, earlier you were just in what you were saying, how initially you were trying to bring some of this information to the legislation. And for those lay people, how does one go about doing that? Can you just knock on their door and say, hey, I don't like the fact that you closed the school. It's not constitutional. How would someone do that?
So I actually ran for state rep back in 2015, 2016. And I became friends with quite a few people that are our state reps today because they were also running back then. So I just through connections, whether it's through their House of Representatives or Senate emails, or if I personally knew them, I would text them or call them. I actually had been invited onto several radio stations that first week of April to try to get the word out all across the state to tell everybody, call your representative, call your senator, email them, show up to coffee times. They usually have, I want to say Mondays and Fridays are usually when they're in district and they're, at some sort of restaurant or some other public entity to sit down and meet with constituents. Those are great opportunities to try to let them know how you feel about a subject. But these days, most of them are also on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or something. So being able to follow up on things that they're posting and sharing your concerns that way, those are all great opportunities to let them know your thoughts on an issue.
So have you heard from other people saying, the governor is just trying to protect us? What do you say to that?
Not only is it not her job to be our mommy, she's not allowed to. So it's not only not her responsibility, but it's not her right to do that to us. We have right in if you look at our Declaration of Independence, if you look at the preamble of our U.S. Constitution, or even the preamble of our state constitution, it's very clear that we don't get our rights from our government. We don't get them from the governor, the courts, even the United States Supreme Court. We don't get them from our president or the legislature or U.S. Congress. We get them from God. And our government is instituted specifically to secure those blessings of liberty and freedom to ourselves and our posterity. And in our state constitution, it says to do so undiminished. So we can exercise all of those God-given liberties undiminished and in fact protected by our government agencies. And then we have things like in the Ninth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and Article 1, Section 23 to our state constitution, we have unenumerated rights. That means we don't have to prove that we have a right that's specifically spelled out in the Constitution in order to exercise that. For example, if we want to go in public without wearing a mask, we have the right to do that because we have an inherent ability to breathe fresh air without having to prove that. We don't get our permissions from government. Government gets its permissions from us. And in fact, if they don't have a permission or authorization in our state or federal constitution to do something, then they don't have the right to do it. I don't care what some statute says, because statutes do not override the Constitution. So when people say, well, Gretchen Whitmer is just trying to save lives, she's doing what's best for us. First of all, I completely disagree. I think there's a lot of unsettled medicine and science. In fact, everything that I'm seeing from actually reputable people working in these areas with patients every day shows that these masks, for example, are not going to help us. In fact, coronavirus is here to stay. It's like the flu. You can't just prevent the flu. We've had a flu vaccine for years, and it's still only 40 to 60% effective in any given year.
Exactly.
So those are, even if the math and science was there, though, that is not the job of government here in the United States. The job here of the government is solely to protect our blessings of liberty. So we need to keep all that in mind when we're trying to figure out how much is the government there to parent us or police us or protect the public welfare. Yes. In fact, just as a side note, the U.S. Constitution does not say the word health at all in the whole thing. Welfare, the word welfare is only mentioned twice. First in the preamble to promote the public welfare. And then later on, it's Article 1, Section 8, I believe, that lists the ability to provide for the common welfare, but that's in the context of financial spending. So we have the government has the right to raise, funds through taxes or imports or all those other things. And in so doing, they can then provide for the common defense and public welfare or general welfare of the United States. That's not to tell us what to do in every single sense or regulate it. That's to provide for it, to allow for those instrumentalities or services to be there. So it's just some food for thought when people think that it's the government's job to protect us for health reasons.
Right. So tell us a little bit about how this whole case came to be. And I know people are a little confused about who hired you, what it actually is, and how it came to be.
So the court case at the Michigan Supreme Court ruled on Friday. That was actually, so I'll explain my role in a second, but where it stems from is the plaintiffs are 3 doctors' offices and then 1 patient who was denied services because of the governor's executive orders. I believe it was a hip or knee replacement that they needed. And of course, the doctors' offices are doctors that could not provide much of their services to people who need it. So they came together as the plaintiffs. They filed in federal district court. That's the federal trial court level. And that's actually where the case itself still sits as a whole. But the federal
Were
court
you their
judge,
attorney at that time? I'm sorry for interrupting you, Kathy. No.
yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's a little complicated, so I'll explain my role in just a second. I'm not involved in the case at the federal level. Basically, that federal court judge said there's issue of federal constitution, there's issues of federal statutes, but if we can decide this case based on state law or state constitution, we'd rather do that instead. So who is the highest authority to explain what state law is in the state of Michigan, or whether a particular action of the governor violates state law or whether a state law violates the state constitution? That's our state Supreme Court. So they certified 2 questions to our state Supreme Court to ask, number 1, did the governor violate either the EPGA, the 1945 law, or the EMA, the 1976 law, by issuing these executive orders after April 30th? And number 2, did either the EPGA or the EMA violate our state constitution, specifically related to the separation of powers clause? And so
Katherine, can I just stop you 1 second? So you say after April 30th. Why that date? Is it because she only had a certain amount of weeks that she could mandate us to stay home? But isn't that unconstitutional as well?
I would argue that the plain reading of our Constitution and those statutes says, in fact, I did argue in the Supreme Court on September 9th that every single one of these orders was unconstitutional from day 1.
Okay.
Whereas the plaintiff's attorney actually said that they conceded that the orders were legal and constitutional all the way through up into April 30th. So now I guess could be a time where I could tell you what my role is. The legislature also had a lawsuit, still does have a lawsuit against the governor. And that's been making its way through the state trial court level at the Court of Claims, and then it went to the Court of Appeals. Before it got to the Court of Appeals, the plaintiffs and the governor actually both asked to be able to jump right on over to get to the Supreme Court. From that point on, I had been filing an amicus brief, basically saying to the court, I don't represent a specific party here in this case. I represent the interests of someone or others outside of this case, but I have a different perspective to offer that will help you solve the issues or resolve the issues here. So I came in as a defender of the Michigan and U.S. constitutions on behalf of Restore Freedom, the overarching name of the movement that I'm working on here. And so I filed briefs in that case with the legislature's lawsuit against the governor, several now because it's been bounced from one court to another. It is back before the Supreme Court, and they have yet to rule on if they are going to take that case at this stage. But I also, when this case was brought in from the federal district court to certify these 2 questions, I filed an amicus brief there as well, and I asked for oral argument. And at one point in time, I was the only attorney that had been granted oral argument. The legislature was subsequently allowed to argue as well. The legislature's attorney argued right after me on September 9th. And then there was the House Democratic Caucus, I believe, was the other amicus that was allowed to argue. So there were 6 of us attorneys that were arguing the case that day. So just to be clear, I didn't represent the plaintiffs. I don't represent plaintiffs in any of these cases that I've been involved in so far. I do have cases I will be filing that are similar in nature, but not the ones that are presently before the court. So that's been my role.
So then after the court rendered its decision, then now what happens? I mean, we have differences of the interpretation of the order. So how can that be?
That is our governor's creative reading skills. That has nothing to do, there's no basis in law with that whatsoever. In fact, we have, I'm just going to grab a case here. So the governor is claiming, well, she told everybody on Friday afternoon when they came out and said, yes, the governor violated the Emergency Management Act of 1976 by issuing orders after April 30th. And yes, the other law, the 1945 EPGA, is entirely unconstitutional. Therefore, she has no legal basis for her executive orders at all. So that's what they said on Friday. Now, what the governor came out and said minutes afterwards at a press conference was, well, my orders remain law for at least 21 days. That's not true at all. First of all, her laws are never, or her executive orders are never laws.
Correct.
But that's another point. Second of all, the second it is deemed unconstitutional, there's absolutely zero legal grounds to say that she has the right to then continue enforcing those unconstitutional orders upon us here in Michigan, especially since they're found unconstitutional, even just on one tiny question. If we even opened the question up to all the ways that she's violating our state constitution, there would be plenty of provisions of our constitution that would be violated. So she is claiming that she has this additional time. The 21 days is she has 21 days to file a motion for reconsideration. And typically, because of that, if there was a specific order or judgment that was going to come out from the Supreme Court relating to this case, then that judgment wouldn't be issued for 21 days because they want to make sure that nothing is, unsettled while they issue the judgment. In this case, though, it's a certified questions case. The Supreme Court has already very clearly said in other cases, even one in 1986, that there is no judgment or order that comes out of one of these certified question cases the moment that the opinions are filed and dated and timestamped with the court. That's when they are considered official. That's when they go into effect. So on Monday this week, she did two things. Mm-hmm. She filed with the Supreme Court a request to have the precedential value, meaning the whole effect of the decision, for that to be set aside for 28 days. And then they also issued through the Department of Health and Human Services practically the same restrictions upon us through emergency orders under some public health code statutes. Mm-hmm. I've been warning people about those public health code statutes since April, but apparently nobody really wanted to listen. Now they're listening. So,
we keep getting these various alerts from different counties saying that they're trying to still limit the gatherings and the wearing of masks, mandating that, the different venue capacities, still closing businesses or restricting, the patronage of those businesses. And it's mind-boggling how that can happen, with something that was just rendered from our Michigan Supreme Court. I mean, just for our viewers to understand, you can't get any higher than the Michigan Supreme Court. So how is it that, and I was going to ask you questions about MIOSHA. How is it that MIOSHA can do similar things with businesses? How is it that these various counties can? Can you explain that a little bit, Katherine?
Yeah, so the reason why I went into all the boring details about how the case came to be is because this is not the typical case that's come up through the state court process. Right. And in these two very narrow questions, the state Supreme Court is the highest court. She cannot appeal to any federal court. It will not go to the United States Supreme Court because they are not the final judge on the issues of state law with state constitution. If there was an element of the U.S. Constitution being addressed or federal law being addressed, that's where a federal court could take over and continue the process. So as far as these other entities, though, let's just look at the local health departments and the Michigan Department of the Health and Human Services. Those are under statutes of our Public Health Code, Chapter 333. Section 2253 is the one that the state is using. Section 2453 is the statute that the local health departments are using. The wording is almost identical. It basically allows them opportunity to issue orders in an emergency related to an epidemic for three things. One, they can enforce current health laws. Well, let's just look at the mask issue. There are no laws that require masks to be worn. So these are not simply emergency orders coming out to help enforce a current law. They can also issue these orders to ensure the continuity or continuation of essential public health services. Well, providing masks to the public during an epidemic could be deemed as providing an essential public health service, providing education on COVID-19 and possible treatments for COVID-19 and awareness about symptoms and transmission. Providing the educational piece to that, I would argue, would definitely be a essential public health service being offered. Key words are service. A service is something you can partake in. It is not a mandate. That does not allow them to mandate that the public wear masks. It does not allow them to mandate the reduction of seating in restaurants or stores, or the closure of movie theaters or bowling alleys or amusement parks. None of that. So then that brings us to the last prong of these opportunities to use under these two statutes. That is the language of that law actually says that they may prohibit the gathering of the people for any purpose. Well, that seems to clearly, yeah, I guess for any purpose they could prohibit. That seems like it's legit, but we have this little thing called the U.S. Constitution and this other little thing called the Michigan Constitution. And in Article 1, the entire first article of our Michigan Constitution is our Declaration of Rights. And Section 3 and Section 4 allow us the right to peaceably assemble, to consult for the common good, to petition our government for redress of grievances. Article 4 or Section 4 picks up with the religious freedoms, the ability to worship God according to the dictates of your own conscience. So that could be in a church of 500-600 people. That could be outside or inside. It could be with a ton of pews or half pews. That is not for the government to decide. So what specifically with our state constitution, we have that language that says that we get to exercise all of those rights literally undiminished. Undiminished means you cannot change or modify them. It does not matter if there's a state of emergency. So, in fact, our state constitution contemplates emergencies in a couple of different places, but specifically Article 4, Section 39 says that government has to continue basic operations at the state and local level, even during a time of emergency. So our lives must continue to be able to go on. But regardless of if this is the bubonic plague or not, we have those rights. Mm-hmm. The government doesn't get to trample on those rights. So if we look at even just look at the U.S. Constitution, Article 6, or look at the case in, I think it was 1856, Marbury versus Madison. If you have a law, a statute, that goes against something that's in the Constitution, that statute is like it doesn't even exist. It's void. It's unenforceable from the word go. We don't need to wait for a court to sort it out and to tell us that we don't have to follow that. We are given those protections for our rights in those constitutions. So when we have a public health order that's trying to limit our ability to assemble or gather for any purpose, that is one of the most blatantly unconstitutional statutes I've ever seen. And we're seeing these local health officials and the state director of the Department of Health and Human Services that are members of the executive branch. Mm-hmm. They are Governor Whitmer's subordinates. And yet they are claiming, and she is claiming in press conferences and the like, that she can continue to exercise the exact same powers that just got struck down as a separation of powers issue by the Supreme Court on Friday. She now can continue to do that under these other two statutes. And she's telling the whole public, well, those had nothing to do with the hearing that was held and the oral arguments made and the decision that came out. No, those specific ones were not brought up, but you don't get to do what was blatantly unconstitutional over here and then go run to the next statute and then apply the same unconstitutional action and try to claim that it's all okay.
So
So
I
those
have,
are the issues that we're bringing up right now.
so we have so many questions, and I have so many questions just from that. And it just appears, I know you said earlier that if a statute flies in the face of what is, given to us, our rights under the Constitution, then, technically it's not legal. The statute is not legal. But look at the great lengths you had to go to, and, some of the plaintiffs had to go to file a claim for their rights that are
Right.
granted to us as Michiganders. And so, yes, while something may fly in the face of the Constitution, it's not easy. And so I have that issue. And then isn't it all about interpretation as well? How can one person interpret the Constitution one way, or is it not up for interpretation? I mean, certainly statutes are, but and that's probably what the governor is going under. I don't know.
Statutes are not open to just interpretation by anyone in that sense. The words mean what the words mean. In fact, we have MCL 8.3, one of our state laws on the books, that goes into the concepts of how we have to apply normal, common sense, everyday meanings to the words of our statutes. Well, likewise, our Constitution, both the U.S. and the state Constitution, the words that were in in those documents back then mean the same thing that they mean today. So it's not this ever-changing, ebbing and flowing document that we get to just stretch to fit the current times. It's literally our whole system of government. If you create a contract with somebody because you're going to start a business with them, and then something in their life changes and they want to say, well, we have it written this way, but it works better for me to do it this way. It just makes more sense now. No, you have to put that in writing if you want to change that. Same thing here. If somebody thinks that, if a governor or if the legislature or even the courts, if they think that the Constitution needs to be changed in some way, then they need to do the constitutional procedures that allow for that Constitution to be changed. You cannot simply just read into it what's not there. And when it comes to words like in our Michigan Constitution, in our preamble, where it literally says that grateful to Almighty God for the blessings of freedom and earnestly desiring to secure these blessings undiminished to ourselves and our posterity, we, the people of the state of Michigan, do ordain and establish this Constitution. There's no equivocating that. There's no way to say that, oh, well, you can diminish them just in this way. No, these rights are constitutionally protected, not given to us by the government. The government, therefore, cannot just take them away. So it's important, there's always, two sides to every story, right? There's always, especially in the legal world, there's always at least an attorney on each side.
3 or 4.
Right? Or in this case, there were 6 attorneys arguing different angles on this case. And I vehemently disagreed with everyone else that these were not even legal or constitutional from day one. They were legal from day one, but that our state law violated constitutional principles, so they were not constitutional from day one. So we need to be very cognizant of what the words of the Constitution actually say.
What happens, I know our Michigan Constitution speaks a lot about, under God. What happens if someone doesn't believe in God? Do they still have to abide or, by the Constitution, or what if they don't even believe in that? What if our governor is an atheist or agnostic?
She's still bound by the Constitution. In fact, our United States Constitution, Article 6, and our state Constitution, Article 11, Section 1, require that if you're going to serve in any kind of government official capacity in the legislative, executive, or judicial branches, then you have to swear to uphold the U.S. and Michigan constitutions. In fact, it says you can take no other oath. So we can't swear an oath to uphold the state laws, because state laws, quite often our legislature gets it wrong. And they put something in there that's not constitutional. So you can't have an oath to something that might cross over or violate the other, right? So they took an oath. It doesn't say whether you like it in that moment, or if it's convenient, or if it's going to help you politically, or if you agree with it, or only if you're Christian. Those things are not in there. It very clearly says, in order to serve in those capacities, you have to take an oath of office to uphold those U.S. and Michigan constitutions. Now, here's an interesting thing that MCL, part of our statutes, 15.151, extends that same oath of office to every single employee or agent of any government agency or local government office. So whether you're a school teacher or a janitor, or whether you are a state police officer or anything in between, if you work for the government, if you are the director of the Department of Health and Human Services, if you are the local health officer in your area, you take the same oath that I took when I got sworn in to practice law here in the state of Michigan, to uphold the U.S. and Michigan constitutions always, not just when it's convenient or when you're not afraid of whatever, a plague, a disease, of whatever. So I understand that can be a tough concept for some people, and they like to misread the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. A lot of people scream about separation of church and state. Those words are not in our Constitution, and they're not in the Constitution for a reason. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit on that.
No, absolutely. I could talk. I mean, you're just so intelligent and just so spot on so many issues. I have some questions coming in, and I would like to address them from our viewers. And one has to do with MIOSHA. I know I brought it up a little earlier. And, MIOSHA has statutory regulations on how things operate, obviously, with businesses, dental offices, restaurants, food trucks, et cetera. How is it that they now have picked up where the governor has been shut down and they're continuing to threaten fines without established legislation? And, can those fines now be challenged? So there's that question from the viewer, but I also have another, issue from that. We understand that the government has, obviously governmental immunity, and it's very difficult to sue the government. Obviously, I know you know that very well. Can the governor also be held to a personal liability standard? Because she seems to be doing these things in direct violation of literally just what was ordered on Friday. And now she continues to try to create issue where there shouldn't be one. So that was a two-part question.
Oh, and loaded questions at that. So, if I can remember the context of the first part of that question. So MIOSHA, any of the state agencies or county agencies or city agencies that are trying to enforce wearing masks or social distancing, providing people with criminal penalties or civil, infractions, or even penalties with their business licenses and things like that. All of that is unconstitutional. So if we look at what the Supreme Court actually said on Friday, they said that the whole statute, the whole 1945 Act is unconstitutional because it violates the notion of separation of powers. And so any person, in fact, it says right in our state constitution that any person who's exercising the powers of one branch of government cannot turn around and exercise the powers that belong to another branch of government. So we literally have our governor out there, and now our director of the Department of Health and Human Services, or MIOSHA, or these local health offices saying, well, now we have these orders and they have the full force and effect of law. It is the law that you have to wear a mask or that you have to be socially distant or whatever, right? No one can make the law in our state except for one of three ways. Interestingly enough, our state constitution has a provision, Article 5, Section 2, that allows our governor to make executive orders that simply serve to reorganize the executive branch. So with that in mind, another part of our Constitution also allows the people of Michigan to initiate legislation. So for example, the 1945 repeal, that was a different petition that had been circulating this summer and was recently turned in on Friday with all those signatures. If the legislature doesn't vote on it or they don't have enough votes to pass that through, that'll go on the November 2022 ballot. And if the people vote on it, it becomes law. In other words, the 1945 law comes off the books officially. It's already unconstitutional. No governor can ever use it again. But just to kind of explain that example. So with that in mind, MCL 8.8 explains that in Michigan, there's only 3 ways to have a law. A law is defined as one of those initiated legislation pieces from the people. One of these executive orders specifically done under Article 5, Section 2 of our state constitution, or a law properly enacted through the legislative process. So those 3 things are the only things that are law. And yet we have a governor saying, well, I can issue these executive orders, or my department heads can issue emergency orders to require people to do all these things. Mm-hmm. Those are not allowed. They're not, literally don't meet the definition of law in our laws. They're definitely the executive branch, whether it's high up at the governor level, whether it's down here at the local school board level, for example. None of them can issue laws. None of them can issue a law if they are in the executive branch. They are not in the legislative branch, and they can't exercise legal, making laws. That type of authority. So
if someone were to be fined, I'm sorry for interrupting you, but so if someone were to be fined or has been fined during this, last 3-4 months, or fined criminally or civilly, do they have recourse now?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to blend that answer with your other question you asked me a moment ago about personal responsibility. So we have something on the books here in Michigan called abuse of process. It is a common law thing. It is not on statutes. We also have malicious prosecution. That is actually in Chapter 600 of our Michigan Codified Laws, as well as the common law notion of malicious prosecution. Those 2 things are state level. We also have federal statutes, 2 that come to mind. And they relate to the same thing. So basically, if you are conspiring to infringe upon or stop a person from exercising rights that are guaranteed to them under the Constitution, then you are criminally responsible for a felony that's punishable by up to 10 years in prison, unless someone has died as a result of that action. Then you can actually be sentenced to death. And that's 18 USC Section 241. You can also use a private lawsuit, if you will, under 42 USC Section 1983 to sue any of these people for violating your rights, and then get, in a civil action, there would be compensation or whatnot that way, depending on what the relief being requested was. So there are definitely avenues for the governor to be held personally responsible. In fact, I've heard that there are several people that either have or are filing attorney grievance commission complaints against the governor for blatantly violating our Constitution, for blatantly violating state law, and then for blatantly lying to the people about it. For example, when she said to the people on Friday afternoon, I believe it was, anyway, sometime in the last few days, she told the people of Michigan that the Supreme Court said that she didn't violate any laws, and her orders stay into effect. They're legally enforceable for at least another 21 days. Those things are 2 blatant lies. That's not what the Supreme Court said. They said she violated the EMA outright. In fact, 7 out of 7 justices agreed that she violated state law. And of course, she was then relying upon a unconstitutional law, the way she was trying to apply it. And the Supreme Court said in the majority opinion there's only one reasonable interpretation of the 1945 law, and that's the way the governor's reading it. But that also is an unconstitutional delegation of power. So anyway, so for the governor to do that, that's why several people have moved towards filing the Attorney Grievance Commission complaints against her. But even if you're just seeking remedy because of a specific loss that you've had, those abuse of process, malicious prosecution, Section 42 USC Section 1983, those are all things that are available. The federal 18 USC Section 241, that's a criminal statute, so that's not going to be directly used if someone wanted to sue her personally. But absolutely, anytime a government official or agent of the government, employee even, anytime that they're going outside of the bounds of their authority, government actors are only given authority under our Constitution, U.S. or state Constitution. If they are going outside of the scope of that authority, and they are continuing to act in a way that also then is causing some sort of damage or infringing upon the constitutionally protected rights of an individual, they no longer can hide behind the governmental immunity. The governmental immunity is there for people who are doing the best to do a good job at upholding the U.S. and Michigan constitutions, and then somehow something might still go wrong where somebody has suffered some sort of economic or physical loss of some kind. But when you have government officials that are blatantly throwing out the Constitution, ignoring all the statutes on the books, and cherry picking what they want to do to force people to do things against their will, she can definitely be held personally responsible for those things. So I hope that kind of blends those two questions for you.
Well, it does. And, Katherine, it's pretty incredible that 7 out of 7, I mean, we're talking nonpartisan, because we all know that some have been appointed by the Democrats and some, Republican, and it's amazing. And then she turns around and says otherwise. It's truly incredible. And I've seen, you started your segment today on how you got so passionate about this particular area, and that was when the schools started to be closed and not reopened. And I too am passionate about that. And I, in my practice, as well as with my own family, I'm a single mom of 3 little kids that the schools were shut down, and it was very difficult for them to homeschool. And children are the least affected by COVID. We know that by science. We've seen it. Rarely are the numbers being talked about relative to the nursing homes and how how that spread through the nursing homes and all of that. But it's amazing to me that there have been deaths unrelated to COVID. We've seen suicide rates increase. I mean, children are depressed and anxious, and I mean, they need the structure, they need the education in the school and their activities. And I would hope that there are some measures taken to remedy that. And they're never going to get this time back. Some of it can be seen as a blessing. I mean, you have more time with your family. But I mean, the long and short of it is she's done a lot of damage in a very short amount of time. And how do we get any of this back?
Right. And I'm a parent of 4. I have a college sophomore, I have 2 high school seniors, and I have a first grader. And so the amount of impact this has had on them is immense because, one of my kids right now is doing entirely virtual learning, not through choice, but because the school district has said, oh, we had one bus driver who has now tested positive for COVID. We're going to shut down all in-person learning as though it's the bubonic plague, as though the Article 8 of our state constitution does not require that we provide that learning environment and education to our children. And so my other child is, only going to school 3 days a week, and then to do, some sort of online learning. And then all my kids play sports. To play sports with a mask, that's not even healthy for anyone, let alone for a child who might have asthma or anxiety or some other kinds of things. I ran in track and cross country. I did basketball and tennis and all kinds of sports in school. I have severe exercise-induced asthma, and I had inhalers, and I had, medical permission so long as I was properly using my inhalers. If I had to wear a mask, that I would have died. I mean, in one of my moments where I needed to have a quick inhale of an inhaler, if I was fumbling to try to get a mask off while I was immediately deprived of oxygen already, I very well could have died in that situation. So you're right. And we're not even aware of what where is the media reporting on the number of increased domestic violence instances, because everyone's been losing their jobs and they're locked in their homes, and, they're forced to do all kinds of learning through programs that, it's through a school, but the school is making all these impositions on them when a lot of parents struggle with the technology, or they struggle with helping their child to learn a concept, and then the teacher's not there in the moment to answer those questions. Maybe the student's not cooperating, and it's creating a lot more, conflict between the family. And where are the supports? A lot of these people the very same people that are arguing that we need to be wearing these masks and doing all this stuff and separating people are the very same people that have been arguing for all these big government programs and supports and services all along. So now we're okay stripping away all these supports and services from people. What about the instances of child abuse and neglect? Even the World Health Organization says domestic violence and child abuse and neglect cases skyrocket when you have any of these factors, let alone all of them combined in the scenario that we have with COVID-19. No mandated reporters are allowed to even see our kids in some of these cases. And when they do, the kid has a mask on and of course their clothes and whatever. So lugging around a big backpack. So most of their facial expressions are concealed. Their skin is concealed. So all the things that you might have been able to see by just looking at a child's face before, to see, you know, whether you're the crossing guard or the basketball coach or the youth leader or the, someone at church, or, you were the teacher or the paraprofessional or the secretary or the principal, all of those people that have been in our children's lives are now basically removed from all of those functions. And we'll never know how many children now have not been reported to have been suffering through abuse and neglect situations, but yet who have needed our help the most during these times.
Right.
So you're right. It is a much bigger, we're focused on the few, like in the nursing homes, the immunocompromised and the elderly who have weakened immune systems. Those are the individuals that are most at risk for this, whereas the young and the healthy, this is far less deadly than the flu if you're young and healthy. And not even just young, but I mean, under 60 and healthy, generally speaking, you are not going to have the severe complications from this. It's far less deadly than the flu. So why are we doing this? Why are we harming our at-risk populations by making them suffer alone and cutting off all of their services? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, it's honestly, it's a tragedy. And in my line of work, I do a lot of domestic and family, and the rise of high conflict cases, the abuse, I mean, just skyrocketed, and not to mention the suicide attempts. And it's just been, literally crazy and figuratively crazy. But what do you think about, there has been a recent bill that was recently passed in Oakland County by a senator from Oakland County regarding putting in video cameras in nursing homes because Governor Whitmer had allowed a COVID positive patient to be placed in a nursing home, and then he ended up abusing one of the residents. And so now it's actually getting looked at, and they're trying to pass it. So I was just curious if you've heard about that, or had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, not that particular one. I have heard about some other bills that are out there. One in particular is in relation to masks, where it might be an interest of the same people that would be interested in the one that I'm unaware about, but where the legislature, in theory, is intending to stop the requirement of mask wearing, for example, for a city council or a local health department or whatever, for them to not be able to have their own mask mandates. However, the bill actually says as long as they get it passed before the bill goes into effect, then all those mask mandates are just fine. They're totally lawful and enforceable. And so that's one bill that I want to say that one was House Bill 6134. If I got that number right, I think I do. Those kinds of bills are dangerous because they come out, our Republican-led legislature has come out swinging with all these protection bills. When you read them, there's been significant problems, like the one that was purporting to provide protection against employers from they couldn't require an employee to be microchipped as a condition of employment. That's not really what the bill did. So the intent might be there, but when our legislature isn't really reading the bills, or when they're trusting the attorneys that work for the legislature, obviously we need to be concerned about the attorneys that work for the legislature at this point, because they were advising them all along to go ahead and issue that first extension and to try to pass things like Senate Bill 858, which violates so many different constitutional provisions. I can't even list them all right now.
Yeah.
that we need to be very careful about. We need to make sure we're passing things that can truly help us, but we need to pass things that are worded in a way that actually do help us and not hurt us, or trample upon our rights in some other way. So I would hope that that particular bill is worded in such a way that actually would provide some protections for future situations like that, and that it doesn't have one of those provisions that ends up backfiring or doing something to hurt those populations instead.
Right. Well, we're getting some more questions, which is why I'm looking down a little bit. But one of the questions is, can the governor, does this mean I guess that this viewer is talking about your, the win on Friday. Does this mean the governor cannot hide the Freedom of Information Act, cannot hide behind the Freedom of Information Act, and should now provide the actual numbers and her sources?
So I don't think the governor is ever going to disclose that information. I think it's going to take the next governor of the state of Michigan to go back in the archives and dig that out and share that with people, because the House of Representatives here in Michigan, I'm not sure if they were joined by the Senate or not, but at any rate, there was some part of our legislative branch that was issuing subpoenas, I want to say as far back as April. If not, then it was May. It was one of the two while ago, right, where they were subpoenaing that very information from the governor, because the information they had been receiving, the numbers were not matching up. We're hearing that over 7,000 people have died in Michigan of COVID-19. No, they haven't. Those numbers are so blatantly false and stretched and pulled in different directions that it's downright disgusting. And there's a reason why we shouldn't trust those numbers, besides the fact that we can cross-check things with, if you dig deep into the other parts of our government website, or if you even look at the CDC numbers, you'll see huge inconsistencies, and you also see the reasons why. That's a whole nother video in and of itself.
I know.
Direction from federal level, from CDC, to purposely increase the numbers and not go with laboratory confirmed results. But at any rate, we need to be cognizant that I don't think those numbers are ever going to come from her. Now, as far as FOIA goes, literally every single executive order that the governor has issued related to COVID-19, it's like they're gone, at least after April 30th. The court did not address whether the EMA was unconstitutional. So the court did not address, in the end, what about that time period from March 10th, the issuance of that first order, through April 30th. So at least, though, they did address any issues, any executive orders issued after April 30th, whether it's to wear a mask or to put COVID patients in a nursing home, or stop you from seeing your own loved ones in a nursing home or juvenile care facility, or whether it's to set aside provisions of the Open Meetings Act or set aside provisions of the Freedom of Information Act. Any of those things, or that, allowed us to basically shut down government services, all of those things, it's like they never even existed. So to the extent that the Freedom of Information Act was limited, those limitations are no longer in place. So hopefully that at least provides some comfort to the person asking the question. But as far as getting the specific numbers, my understanding is that our governor was actually asked to testify in Congress about it. And last I had heard, she was refusing to cooperate with that testimony as well. So,
well, we also know some of the numbers were inflated from the hospitals because they received more money. I personally know of a couple people that passed away because of either cancer or a car accident. And because they just happened to have COVID in their system, they listed it as a COVID death. And so, we have, like you said, such inflated and skewed numbers. It'll be, only time will tell. I can't believe this hour just flew by. There are so many other questions that I'm getting from viewers and that I want to ask you. But before we end, though, Katherine, if you could just give our viewers some takeaways. What can they do now? Can they start, going out, not wearing a mask? What if there's a restaurant that says, no, you must still wear a mask?
So I'm going to tell people the best thing, first of all, just so people understand, no one's paying me to do any of this work. It's all been by donation. So with that in mind, I do the best I can, but I can't afford to pay staff. I have some volunteers that help me and they do the best they can. But I do this every single day. Haven't taken a day off since the beginning of April. But so I'm working as fast as I can, but keep in mind, if you go to my website, restorefreedomkh.com, restore freedom, K as in Catherine, H as in Henry.com, that's where I have all of this information. It's like the hub of information. So there's links to all of my videos on YouTube. There's, and it'll, you'll be able to click and find ways to subscribe. So it'll give you notifications when I do another YouTube video. There'll be, there's links to my Facebook accounts and Google and LinkedIn and everything on there. There's also an entire resources tab. So I've put on there all the briefs that I've been filing with the Michigan Court of Appeals and Supreme Court. I put some of the more important Supreme Court orders and things that have come out. I will be putting some additional documents in the next coming day or two. In fact, on masks specifically, I will continue to post resources for people as I have time to get those done and posted. But can you go in public without wearing a mask? Absolutely, it's your God-given freedom. And there is no law in effect right now that requires masks anyway. If there was one on the books, it would be unconstitutional. But there is no law. The governor has no 21 days to keep exercising unconstitutional authority. All of these agencies are clearly stepping outside of the bounds of what even the law is claiming to allow them to do. So you do not have to wear a mask. What you can do, you can frequent all the businesses that are not violating your rights. You can gently or respectfully educate those government agencies or businesses that are currently violating your rights. And to the extent that any business is, denying you a service that by trying to be an extension of the government, right? Being an arm of the government and enforcing these unconstitutional orders, they have the same restrictions placed upon them that the government agencies themselves would. So they can't do that just because, it's Meyer or Menards or something. So in those instances, ask kindly to be able to speak to a manager and try to educate them on what's happening. Also, though, there's some other significant things you can do. I drafted that Restore Freedom Initiative constitutional amendment petition. Like I said earlier, this is the thing that will actually fix all of this. I've been warning people from day one. It's not the 1945 law that was the biggest part of the issue. We have the 1976 law. We have the pieces of the public health code that are now, people are coming to me saying, wait a minute, what is this? And I'm like, I've been telling you all along, that's a problem. So now that people are waking up and seeing that, go to that restorefreedomkh.com, click on petition. You'll be able to see ways that you can get involved. There's a Get Involved tab. You can help us circulate. There's a Donate tab. You can help donate to the cause so I can continue to print all this paper, so I can continue to write these briefs in the Supreme Court, so I can continue to travel around and have gas money to go all across the state to educate people by the hundreds or even thousands on what their constitutionally protected rights are. So do help in any of those ways. We'd love for you to help collect signatures. We need 425,059 signatures to be turned in order to get this constitutional amendment petition on the November 2022 ballot. And if you hear 2022 and you're like, oh, I can't wait that long. If you really think court cases, if you want to sue someone, if you want to personally sue the governor, if you think that case is going to be final and settled and you're going to have some sort of payment in hand before then, chances are highly unlikely that would happen. So you might as well get behind this where it doesn't really cost you anything. Help us get signatures. Do your part to ensure the success of this. And in fact, the more that you guys are helping me with those signatures and getting the word out there that way, the more time I have freed up to be able to write these briefs and these motions and keep fighting the legal fight. So those are some really easy ways that people can get involved. And of course, I'm always willing to answer questions, on all the different avenues that people can reach me as well.
Katherine, would you take some private clients? I know so many people that would want and need your services. And if so, how can they find you other than through the website?
I'm not currently able to take any. I have one private client, and that's a constitutional case. We're getting ready to file. I need to keep fighting the bigger fight, if you will. Any possible, wherever God's leading me to on this fight, that's where I'm going. So I'd love to be able to take a bunch of cases for pay. That'd be great. But in the meantime, donations are helpful. So when I am able to take cases, I will plaster that all over my website. You won't be able to miss it. If I don't have it posted on there, please make sure that for those of you that are watching, that you don't. I'm getting inundated. I'm literally getting hundreds of emails a day, hundreds of calls a day, hundreds of text messages a day. I simply cannot keep up with all those. And the more I'm doing those, the more I'm not actually doing the work that's going to help everyone in the state of Michigan. So I just ask people to be patient. I am trying to build a network of attorneys that I know are taking certain cases related to these things. So I know, for example, I know of an attorney who said he'll take cases that if you get charged with one of these misdemeanors related to a COVID-19 order violation, he'll take that case. I know of another attorney who contacted me recently who said she'll help with kind of another aspect of those kinds of cases. So I'm waiting for attorneys. If you're willing to take those cases on, please send me a little 1-paragraph blurb about the kind of case and the contact information, how you want people to reach you, and I will gladly add you to my list. Of course, I can't personally recommend all the people I'm listing. I'm just listing them as options. But we need to work together as attorneys that want to fight for our freedom. We need to try to find as many of us out there as possible, because I've been starting to think that I've been all alone in this battle.
No,
So.
I certainly do. I'm with you right along. And I'm just so, again, just so honored that you were on the show today. I know you're so busy, and I am very, very grateful for all the hard work. I know how hard and how much time it's been taking you. And I apologize that I've been a little sick. No, it's not COVID, but there you go. I've been wearing masks because I've been legally required, and here I get a cold. It's just a cold. But anyway, Katherine, thank you so much, and I wish you all the best, and good luck with the next round of briefs that you have to do.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Have a great day.
You too.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it right from Katherine Henry. She has been working around the clock. This has been a passion of hers. She is just so eager to help everybody. And, it's all about empowering through knowledge and education, and it's restoring our freedoms. And it's not necessarily talking about Republican or Democrat or who's right or who's wrong. It's about doing what our founding fathers had worked so hard to get for us, and that's freedom. Freedom for every one of us. I don't care if you're black, white, brown, yellow, green, purple. It's all about being free under one nation, under one state, and no one can take away those rights. And you heard it from her. 7 out of 7 justices had stricken Governor Whitmer's orders, and that's pretty incredible. And where's the media? We don't hear anything about that from the media. So, ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to get empowered, get knowledgeable, know what your rights are. And of course, if you need to be safe if you're immunocompromised. We don't want anyone to get sick that doesn't have to get sick. But when you look at the big picture of everything, people get the flu and they don't shut down schools. I understand that there are vaccines for the flu, but that doesn't prevent you from getting the flu. I've gotten the flu vaccine year after year, and I still get the flu. So I'm sick right now, and I've been wearing masks. So it's just a matter of time that things will shake out. Things will become, more normalized. And when we look back on all of this in 10 years, we will certainly learn and know really how better to evolve and to transform our state and our country here on out. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, kudos to Katherine Henry. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you to you viewers who stand by the Cronin Law Firm and our shows. I just want to provide knowledge and education and empowerment. And please come back on Tuesday and Thursday of next week, where we will be giving you more information and more highlights and empowerment. And we're here with you 24/7. Call us 248-258-3500 and call us at the Call Cronin law firm, and you can text us at that same number, 248-258-3500. Check out our YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe to that, where we upload this content regularly. And please check out our podcast and do become a fan of our firm. I'm just here to show you, empower you, and guide you along life, because, you know, we have to serve one another. It's all we have. Take care, everybody. Keep your spirits high, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.